I mean, there's rabid censorship going on right now. And like you were just saying, like under a fascist, tyrannical regime, obviously people that are speaking truth to power are going to be targeted. But a bigger concern regarding the media that you do go into in this book is how it has been completely purchased by the oligarchy. And that's one of the key steps in creating their oligarchy, is having control of the narrative. And so when someone like Donald Trump says, oh, that's fake news, yeah, kind of, in regards to some of the stuff he's talking about, because it's very cherry picked and it's very propagandized and it's corporate talking points. And so we're in this problem where the good journalists are obviously being persecuted and the other ones are spewing corporate talking points. So, you know, how do you reconcile it?
Well, and the last point that I would add to your list of the crimes of the media, or the failures of the media, is that the decisions that are made about what is going to be presented to us as news and what isn't are not based on what's important. They're based on, however you define the word important, they're based on what's going to get the most views, what's going to hold people's attention. If they thought they could get away with showing us cat videos all night, they'd do it, you know, because it's all about getting the money from the advertisers. But the reality is that, you know, from the 1920s until 1996, we had laws in place to prevent the consolidation of media, precisely because we understood what a threat that would be. And you know, particularly after the yellow journalism era of the late 1800s, those laws actually got radically strengthened in the 1920s and 1930s as they applied to broadcasting. So that if you owned a newspaper in one particular place, you couldn't also own a radio station or a television station. If you owned a radio station, you had to live in the state. If you had a television station, you had to live in the state. There was cross ownership bans and aggregate ownership bans, and they were absolutely in place. And that all got blown up in 1996 when Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act of 96. And you saw this little company, Clear Channel, that had, you know, a few dozen radio stations down south, suddenly buy basically every consequential radio station. I mean, they ended up with almost 1,000 radio stations within a year or two. And what did they do with those stations? Well, it was a very conservative company. They put right-wing talk shows on, you know, probably 20% of them. That's just a guess, but, you know, a good chunk of them. And then, you know, the Cumulus, same deal. I mean, this is a crisis. Media ownership in the United States. We need to relocalize media ownership, and we need to be breaking up the big media combines. And let me just add a punctuation mark to this, which I don't think is in the book. I think it was in the first draft. I had to cut like 20,000 words out of the book, but because I write long and I'm talking long. I'm sorry, but when Howard Dean, who was, you know, Bernie Sanders progressive, just slightly less than Bernie, but, you know, they were friends and colleagues from Vermont, and we lived right down the street from them, and from Howard. And when he was running for president, and he was at the top of his game, I mean, he was on the cover of Time magazine. He was in the Democratic primary. He was at the cover of Time magazine. He was at the top of the opinion polls. And Chris Matthews had him on his show on MSNBC. And he said to Howard Dean, he said, they started talking about something with the economy, and Dean said something about monopolies, and that monopolies were helping screw up the economy or preventing it from growing. And Chris Matthews said, well, what about media monopolies? And Howard Dean said, well, you should break them up. And there was this long pause, and Chris says, but, you know, we're on MSNBC, we're owned by General Electric. You know, it's not a media company, it's a giant combine. You know, should we be forced to spin off NBC and MSNBC? And Howard Dean said, absolutely, it should be broken up. And I turned to my wife, to Louise, who was sitting next to me, and I said, he's toast. He's completely screwed. And 5 days later was the Dean scream, as I recall. It might have been a week later. It was in that neighborhood where they took a perfectly normal thing and just jacked the audio insanely and made it seem like he was nuts and destroyed him.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.